Okay, we're at the top of the hour, so let's go ahead and get started. Stacy, I'll let you start us off today.
Sure. Well, hi everyone for joining. My name's Stacey Edgar. I'm the CEO of Venteur and excited to introduce Lisa and these three exciting ICHRA experts from Oscar, Sentara, and Centene who joined us here today to talk about ICHRA and what's in store for the future. Just for those of you who may be getting to know us for the first time, Venteur is an ICHRA technology platform who works with all three of these carriers and have seen them grow explosively over the last year and really also be huge partners in driving a new future of healthcare, which we want to discuss today. So I'm gonna turn it over to Lisa to kick things off and also to introduce our panel.
Okay, thanks so much. Let's go ahead and get started here. As Stacy said, we're thrilled to have these panelists with us today. I mean, they are playing in the ICHRA space. They understand it, give you a different perspective just from, hearing from us. So what I'd like you to do is each one of you just introduce yourself, your role, and just talk about your company. And I always get this question. It is being recorded, so we will share it with you after the presentation. We do want to take your questions. You probably have a lot of them. If we don't have time at the end, we will reach out to you individually, but feel free to put your questions in the question and answer box. So we'll go ahead and get started just from where I see in the on the discussion, Ambetter or Centene. You can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. And thank you, Stacy. So good afternoon, everybody. Matthew Domagala. I'm the Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives at Ambetter Health, also known as Centene, our parent company. So if you're on the group broker side, don't do individual, you may not recognize our name. We are a Fortune 22 company. Ambetter Health serves over 5 million members on the individual ACA market. We're really excited about that. We love competing for the right to members and earning the right to their business. And so that's a big differentiator for us and why we're excited about ICHRA. Previous stints for me include, other carriers such as United Healthcare, but also places like Liaison, which was an early adopter to private exchanges, which were a form of defined contribution. So very excited for the discussion today.
Thanks, Lisa and Stacy. Thanks everyone for joining us today. My name is Andy Mueller, for those that I have not met on the call. I'm a sales lead on the growth team here at Oscar Health, namely focused on distribution relationships with ICHRA administrators like Venteur, brokers, consultants like you all on the call, and supporting our sales and strategy from an ICHRA perspective nationally. Very focused on making sure Oscar is at the forefront of expanding the individual market. For those of you who are not familiar with Oscar, we are an individual market carrier only. So, when you look at what we're trying to accomplish, our A team is all focused on the individual market and how we expand that. Obviously, ICHRA being a big focus of that, and making sure to get employees, access to a carrier and a healthcare experience that they haven't had access to before. So, super excited for the discussion today, and I appreciate you having me on here, Lisa and Stacy.
Yes, thank you, Stacy and Lisa, for including me in this. My name is Don Labar. I'm the sales manager for individual and family plans for Sentara Health Plans. Sentara Health Plans is Virginia-based. We've been here, and this is where we're at. This is where our network is. So we are a full-service health plan with Medicaid, Medicare, individual, small group, mid-market, large group, self-funded, and all of that. I'm in charge of growing the individual and family plans across the state. We are an integrated delivery network. So we have the hospitals, we have the providers, and we also are the payer. We have a great full suite of health plans and lines of business available, and I'm happy to talk about them today.
So I think it's interesting. We have a variety of carriers on this panel, right? We've got the nationals and we also have a local carrier. So probably get different perspectives as well, which would be really insightful. So let's just kind of kick this off before we get into the questions here. There was a Oliver Wyman published article that I just wanted to highlight really quickly, and it's entitled, "Insurers Need to be Proactive in Preparing for ICHRA Growth." we all realize that ICHRA is growing. I mean, there's so much discussion, and the adoption is really growing as well. A lot of it's driven by just the increase of the healthcare costs, but also the employee population, remote employees, and a really diverse workforce today. And we've got some, regulatory environment that supports it as well. So in this article, and I'm going to read this because I think this is important, it's stated, and I quote, "We think factors taking place in the broader market will continue to boost individual coverage, not the least of which is the mounting interest in individual coverage health reimbursement arrangements." So they specifically point out ICHRA. And companies like we have on our panel today, Centene or Ambetter, Oscar, they have stated specifically their intentions to build out this ICHRA opportunity. So it's great to have them here today to share some of that. And if we have other players like Sentara and other local carriers that support this, and we can really continue to maintain this momentum that we're getting. I think about, when level funded programs came out. Back then, what happened was there was a major effort from the carriers, but also the TPAs and also those engaged brokers or the aligned brokers. And I think it's very similar. So I just draw that analogy. There is the HRA Council is a council that is made up of ICHRA administrators. There's carriers on the council. There's even some brokers on the council, and they focus on ICHRA. And each year they publish a data report survey. This year's has not come out yet, so I'm going to reference last year. The growth, year-over-year growth for overall ICHRA was 29%. And then for large group, it's 84%. So we can see also within the data that there is significant growth. So today, many of you, and I think, Andy, you may have mentioned it, or Matt, most of you have worked in the group market, not the individual market. So having a discussion from the carriers on the individual market, I think will be very, very insightful. So let's jump in to the questions. So I will start, Matt, and again, each one of you will answer the questions, just a couple minutes giving your insights. First question, what are you seeing in terms of ICHRA adoption trends?
Yeah, I really like this question. I think there's two angles here, and for our group broker audience, I think the interesting thing here is we're seeing live here in real time what consumers are wanting to shop for when they're given a lot of options and choice. And so we're all kind of learning in terms of that adoption. So we have two angles here. One is, what are we seeing a little bit from the employer side and the broker side in terms of adoption trends? But also then what are we seeing from the employee side? I'm going to start with the first side of employers, because I think a lot of brokers are going to ask themselves, who is right for ICHRA, right? And Lisa, I think it was a pretty apropos analogy here to level funded and when that first came out and it being foreign, right? And ICHRA is another tool within your tool chest to pull out for the right employer, but who is that, right? The trends we see on our side, there's small group, there's large group, there's those that are new to insurance, which really covers every segment of the market, most importantly. But then what are the identifiers that you see within those groups? Well, number one is it's really going to depend on that financial profile of the company, but premium increases tend to be a good indicator. And the higher, the more likely they are to probably want to consider an alternative. The second, which Lisa hit on a little bit, is an diverse workforce. It gets harder to t-shirt size people into 3 plans with one carrier, especially when you're serving from baby boomers all the way down to Gen Z, and everybody's looking for a little bit of something different. Their family dynamics are different. Some want to buy down, some want to buy up, some want a lean network, some want a rich network. And so I think that's another important equation. The other thing we see is a lot of mid-sized employers expanding sizes in states, which I'm sure you all can attest to. So, hey, I'm offering one health plan and that fits my needs, but now I'm adding a new state and maybe I don't want to manage 2 health plans and have all this administrative, efficiencies that I have to worry about, right? Offering an ICHRA allows everybody to see the local options where they live, and pick from those local options. So you don't need to worry so much about where your site is and how that's impacting potentially the network. So I think that's another important trend that we're seeing. You know, I'll mention like things like convenience stores when they're popping up across state lines and things like that. Large conglomerates like that are just expanding remote workforces in various states. The other one is just no participation requirements in ICHRA, which is unique. So a lot of small employers feel this is out of reach. And the short answer to that is it's not. And ICHRA is an option that they don't need minimum participation. It can be one person buying the health plan and they can have an ICHRA. They're not going to get declined their coverage or be told that they can't have group insurance. And so I think from a trend perspective, those are some of the things we're seeing among employers that are just looking to offer more choice and sort of not have to have the administrative tasks assigned to them of looking at that renewal and figuring out how they're navigating deductibles that year and making changes to make sure the premium fits what their financial needs are, and they're not passing too much on to the employee. Instead, offer a contribution, size, you know, the employee can size themselves into the right plan. I think that those are sort of crucial aspects. And then just quickly on an employee front, what we're actually seeing is higher participation in richer plans, gold plans, and things like that. And so what we're seeing is that employees actually want to buy coverage that maybe they're not getting today, and they're willing to pay out of pocket for it a bit. And then employers typically aren't just sizing down contributions and moving over here to save money. A lot of them are looking to offer similar to what they're offering today. The dollars are just carrying further when they're moving to the individual market. And then these individual participants are really making the choice on what's right for them. And so, you know, those trends are leading to right now higher participation in gold than we would normally see on exchange.
That's a lot. Thank you for all that. I mean, that's sharing a lot. And Andy, I'm sure that you are going to echo some of it because so much was covered, but love your insight as well.
Matthew hit the nail on the head on a lot of this. But I think I'll try and take a little bit of different approach to fill in some areas that I think I could probably provide some value here. But to Lisa's point, you know, there's public reports out there talking about the year-over-year growth of ICHRA, you know, most rapid growth being in the ALE segment. I think, and it kind of wraps around what Matthew just mentioned, but it's pretty clear that, you know, with certain states, you can see that there could be options that, you know, individual market may look more attractive. I think we need to take that with a grain of salt, because at the end of the day, ICHRA is really industry and group size agnostic today, right? Matthew mentioned the groups down to one life. You know, we see groups enrolled with us from 4 lives up to over 5,000 lives, right? So it doesn't necessarily matter the size of the group. It doesn't really matter the industry that the group's in. It's what's the problem that the group's, you know, facing? Is it their high turnover? Is it they are budget sensitive, or they're looking for predictability? You know, is there, to Matthew's point, is there a distributed workforce that they need to solve problems with? Do they have per diem staff? You know, there's a lot of different factors that make ICHRA a very attractive solution, and they're looking for something outside the status quo, right? And so I think when we're looking at ICHRA, I think a big point that I want to make here is that, you know, it's a great tool, but it can't be the tool that's being brought out last, right? Like, this is something that we need to be focused on up front, because if it's not done up front the right way, and with proper expectations, it's going to put a bad taste in everybody's mouth, to be straightforward with you. So I think it's one of those things that, you know, if there's groups that you're like, hey, this group is continually talking about these issues that they're having with their benefits, you know, maybe looking into an ICHRA for them on the side prior to really diving in and bringing it to a renewal meeting is definitely something that we should all be considering. And then I'll take a little bit different angle at like an employer profile industry segment. I'd say, again, it's pretty agnostic today, but I'd say ones that we're seeing a little bit higher click rate for adapting today are going to be, you know, they fall into those buckets I mentioned, but, you know, healthcare, caregiving, construction and trades, retail, hospitality, you know, nonprofits that are really looking for predictable budgets that they can bring to the board and make sure it makes sense. Municipalities, things of that nature, we're definitely seeing at a higher click, you know, seeing ICHRA as an option. But overall, I mean, there's so many options that can come to the table, and ICHRA needs to be one of those options, right? And Matthew mentioned it, Lisa mentioned it. It's not going to be the perfect fit for every group. It's not a one size, hey, here's silver bullet, it's going to make sense. But hey, do you have a group that your composite rates are contributing for these national networks that you don't need access to, that a lot of your employees are overinsured for, let them go choose what they want to do with those dollars to pick a plan that makes sense for their family. So we're going to see this continue to be a trend down the line, and I'm definitely excited to see the click rate over 2026, because 2025 was definitely a large jump, and we're excited to see with carriers getting more involved, brokers getting more involved, and making sure that we're driving a larger runway ahead for this product.
I think you make an important point. The brokers that have been working with ICHRA for a while, it's no longer kind of that last resort type of an approach. They see the value of it because they've experienced it and know when there's a good fit. So Don, turn it over to you.
Sure. Matthew and Andy did a great job of going over things, so I'll just kind of chime in a little bit. What I'm seeing is it is groups that are looking for rate relief, they're looking for other options, and a lot of the lead that I'm seeing is coming from the brokers. It's the brokers are educating the groups on it and telling them about it, and I'm not seeing it coming from the group saying, hey, I've heard about this. It's the brokers that are taking the lead on it. One of the things that I'm seeing a lot, that the way the groups are looking at it is kind of like the retirements back in the 90s, going from a defined contribution or a defined benefit to a defined contribution. The groups want to know how much they're going to be paying next year. They want to be able to plan this out, and by having the ICHRA, they can look at it and then they can plan it out by setting up an HRA without having to worry about the rate increases.
Yeah, that's a great point. Good analogy. All right. Let's go on to the next question here. So how are your individual plans evolving to meet the needs of the employers choosing to offer ICHRA in lieu of their group health plan? It's a change for them. So wanted some insight there. And Andy, I'll let you start with this one.
Sounds good. I'll try not to take too long here, but I think, as I mentioned, Oscar is an individual carrier only, right? So we're positioned very well to bring plans to market with the individual in mind. I mean, that's what we have been doing. That's not new for us. So ICHRA is simply an elevated effort for us to allow more folks access to a carrier like us and to access to our award-winning NPS as a carrier. So when we think about being more innovative, I mean, I think what we're doing is expanding on what we're already doing. So we're going to continue to curate more off-exchange plan offerings. We of course did that for 2025, but we expect to expand that, going into 26 and beyond. But then, how do we close some gaps? Think about the employer-sponsored enrollee when we're putting plans together. Think deductibles, max out-of-pockets, an urgent care copay from a group plan to an individual plan in the metal tier in that deductible range. Like, what do those look like? How can we avoid large disruptions and keep those gaps smaller when we're moving folks into the model? I think a big thing is HSA compatibility, right? Oscar didn't necessarily have many HSA plans on the individual market prior to thinking about ICHRA. That's, of course, changed now in 2025. So we're going to continue to do those types of things as a table stake, right? And then on top of that, we're going to continue to bring our current condition-specific offerings to more markets. So our COPD plan, our diabetic plan, our CKM plan, those types of plans that really meet members where they are in their healthcare journey are not a plan that they're going to see in the group market, right? So how can we make sure these employees are well aware that these plans are out there, which is exactly what everybody on this call is there to do, is provide your expertise and make sure we're offering plans that really fit a member. And, of course, it's very easy to go into an ICHRA model and see the carriers that these folks have known forever and not necessarily look at an Oscar and Ambetter when they're in there. But I think at the end of the day, that's exactly why the broker and the consultant is so important, to understand that there are options for employees that really make more sense for their family, whether it's the access or the cost of the plan, including what the benefits look like. So those are the types of things we're going to continue to bring to market on top of new options, whether it's condition specific plans or obviously expanding into different markets with other off-exchange portfolios. Those are all things that we're considering and we're talking through. But this is not something that's necessarily new for Oscar. I think the one point I'll make here, and then I'll pass it on, is we're looking at these members not just as an individual and family plan member coming into the Oscar book, like the majority of our book has been over the years prior to ICHRA. we are actually tagging these members as ICHRA members, giving them a different member experience, more so focused on the employer-sponsored segment, right? We're working on enrollment and billing integrations with partners like Venteur and others to make sure that it's as seamless as possible when members are enrolling with their individual plans, and then making sure they get access to our ICHRA-specific care teams, so they're not getting communications about the marketplace, about subsidies or things like that. They're getting or billing communications that they shouldn't be getting. We're making sure we're accessing these members and treating these members as their own segment within our book of business. So those are things that we're going to continue to improve on and make sure that we provide the best experience for these members, just like we do on the IFP market.
You mentioned off exchange a couple of times, and I think that's just important to highlight because it's just not marketplace plans for these carriers. And I think there may be a perception out there that that's all that there is for those that are just starting to dive into this. So Don, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. So Andy talked about HSAs. We do have a lot of interest in HSAs coming from our group side. And their concerns is that they want everything to be seamless when they move over to an ICHRA. With our HSAs, it's integrated, so we have a claims load every night. So that information goes up and they can pay out of the website and things like that. And they want to make sure that all moves over. So we do have that in place. So we have HSAs for our individual plans. We also have off exchange as well as on exchange plans. And for 2025 one of the things that we did for this year is we offered a platinum plan for our off marketplace, because we heard a lot from brokers. We're very broker centric. We heard a lot from brokers saying, hey, I want to move to an ICHRA, but I want a plan that's comparable to my group plan. Can you come up with something? So that's why we came out with this platinum plan that's off marketplace, and we're getting a lot of good traction with that.
That is new, interesting. Matthew?
Yeah. Echo what the others have said here. I think a couple of things we've done on our end. So first of all, for those that aren't clear, you can do on or off exchange for ICHRA, but there's pre-tax implications in a positive way for the members and employees when they're picking off exchange. So we've launched in 6 states last year what we're calling Solutions, which is an off exchange product portfolio that focuses really on ICHRA. A couple of things that we've done there that are different. And again, what we're trying to do is understand that people are coming from all sorts of different backgrounds. They're really entering a Barnes and Noble for the first time in their life and being, shown a lot of choice from a lot of different carriers. And so we want to provide optionality across the board, right? Whether that's bronze, silver, gold, whether that's variance in network. So we've done PPOs in both Indiana and Missouri last year. That was new. And to the point that Don's making, right, what we're hearing too from the employer and broker side is, I'm not necessarily looking to move to ICHRA and just buy down. I need to benchmark what I have today, and I need to be able to find something similar. And so, we've had that in mind as well, and just making sure that we're procuring offerings that seem to fit what employees are used to while providing more flexibility and choice across the board. And from a product perspective, similar to what Oscar is saying, what Andy said, yeah, we've launched, new service and sort of segment these members separately for those same reasons. Because we realize that, there's a higher expectation here coming from group. Employees are getting used to the idea of shopping and being in charge of what they need, but they still need a little bit of white glove service to get them there. So we focused, whether it's on, our call center capabilities and identifying ICHRA members, to supporting brokers with a broker relationship team across our Ambetter solution states to ensure that group brokers have a pathway to talk to us and feel like they can build a relationship with us, not only understand the products and the plans and the differentiations, but make sure that they can escalate issues and still have that close relationship with that employer to make sure that things are getting resolved timely.
All this is music to my ears. I mean, what I'm hearing is you guys are making it easier, seamless, simpler. It really addresses some of the challenges, and you're bringing it to market. So the next question, what are you doing to address provider in-network access? So we get a question so many times. Groups, they're used to the PPO network, and some, in some states, some carriers, they don't have the PPO, and they're concerned about that. So just wanted, whoops, each of you, I went ahead or behind? No, sorry about that. To address that, specifically about the PPO. So Don, I'll start with you.
Okay, great. So for Sentara health plans, our individual plans are HMO based, and our HMO network is exactly the same as our group network. So when we have groups moving over from the HMO, they don't have to worry about any kind of network accessibility issues. And even though we are an HMO, I kind of think of us as a super HMO. And because we're different than just a normal HMO. Normal HMO, you have gatekeepers and it's a very restricted network. For us, we have an open access HMO, so there's no gatekeepers. You can go see a specialist if you want to. We're not going to tell you you have to go to your PCP first. In addition to that, even though we're Virginia based, we have hospitals outside of Virginia. So we have Johns Hopkins in Maryland, and we have Duke University in North Carolina. So we have a very strong network. In addition to that, we also have virtual visits. And for all of our plans, except for the HSA plans, which have a low copay, all the virtual visits are a zero copay. So that means if somebody was in, say, Florida, they were at Disney World with their family and they broke their leg, well, of course they're covered because that's an emergency. But what if they're there and they have horrible allergies and they just can't go on any rides because they feel miserable? Well, they can call in virtual visit for a zero copay and get a prescription called into a local pharmacy. So that's something that we offer with our HMOs that's kind of better than a traditional HMO. So of course, PPOs are great, but I think what we have is something special.
Matt?
Yeah. So a couple of things. So first of all, yeah, we offer very similar no referrals on our HMOs. The other thing I'd say is if you're a group broker, you're very used to advising clients based on a single carrier, sometimes maybe two networks from that carrier. What we're talking about here is access. The way I kind of compare it is if you've ever had, Wi-Fi at home and you have a single Wi-Fi, or you move to that mesh network and there's coverage, not just from us, but from Oscar and Sentara. Not one carrier needs to meet all your needs anymore because employees can find the choice that they need within inside of the carrier's ecosystems, finding what's right for them and right sizing. So again, using that t-shirt size, we don't need a triple XL in terms of the PPO at all times here, because not everybody needs to fit into that one umbrella in a single carrier, and you have to meet everybody's needs. Some folks are going to find and align with what we have on our product store shelf in terms of the provider selection we have. Others might align more closely to Sentara or an Oscar or a Blue Cross. And that's kind of the beauty of opening up that choice. The second piece to this is while we have offered PPOs, our solutions network off exchange, whether that's HMO or PPO, we do have out-of-state coverage as well there. So that means if you go live in Indiana but work in Ohio or in Kentucky, you can use our network in those other states. There's reciprocity across state lines to our solutions product itself, which again, we hear from employers that sort of border there, right? Hey, got an employee, they're living in Ohio, but they work in Kentucky. They're receiving care in Kentucky. I have concerns around how the individual network handles that and the individual market handles that. Well, the short answer is you don't need to worry. There are carriers that do have that as well. And then in general, again, you need to look less at just a single carrier and more at the construct of the entire market, and just make sure that the names that you need there are there when you're looking at things like a disruption analysis.
Great. And Andy?
Yeah, some great points for sure. I think that's exactly it. I think there's two ways you look at this, right? Our PPO is not necessarily needed with ICHRA, I think is an interesting question, because there's going to be the folks that say they're absolutely necessary to be there. And I don't necessarily disagree completely with that. However, the vast majority of folks are just not educated on what they're actually utilizing within the PPO, right? Do they actually access the out-of-network benefits? Most likely not. They're just wanting the large breadth of the network, right? And to Matthew's point, within the ICHRA model, they can choose Oscar when they want the Cleveland Clinic, and they're going to choose someone else if they want, XYZ, right? So those are the types of things that I think there's educational gaps that we can help employers and employees fill. But there's that status quo that they've been used to. The employees are just selecting their low, medium, high HSA potential options within the group space. And, they have to make sure the network makes sense for their entire body of employees. And really, if we want to truly drive down the cost, and of course, the individual market and the average increase is really right in line with CPI, where, small and middle market is not. We're able to do that if we're able to bring networks and curate networks for folks within different markets that make sense. Because for most people, healthcare is local. I mean, it really is, right? Outside of the unexpected emergency, urgent care visit, needing a prescription, which of course within the ACA, you're still gonna have coverage for a lot of those things. There's a lot more virtual care options now, right? On all of our Oscar plans, you're gonna have 24/7 unlimited virtual care at $0 on your plans, outside of the HSA options. So there's options to fill in those gaps. And I think there's a lot of, educational awareness that can happen to really support this. And I think one point that I'll leave to take away is that I think PPOs and the blanket thought of the PPO helps bring the ICHRA to the table and sets people at ease, especially from an HR perspective and things like that. But when we really see the click of folks picking their own plans, PPO is at a much lower rate than the EPO and HMO structures. And especially once somebody's in an ICHRA, we've consistently seen that if they choose a PPO in year one, they actually move to an EPO or an HMO in year two within the ICHRA model, which just shows, I think, they start to be actual consumers of their healthcare, right? And they can decide, what am I doing with these dollars? Does it make sense to be paying for those 4 facilities I'm never going to step foot in? And I think that's where we're going to continue to get over time. But I also think that's where everybody on this call, like your expertise and your ability to help these members navigate and really become consumers of the healthcare is going to make everybody put everybody in a better position when it comes to taking care of their health. So.
Yeah, I would echo, we see the same in the enrollment. They go from maybe a PPO or, a known carrier that they've had before. And the next year they make a change that's very different. They realize they don't need that national network because, to your point, it is a local plan that they're choosing. So just a new way of thinking about things. Next one, any innovations you're working on to make individual coverage more attractive? You probably have touched on some of this in some of the other questions. So if you feel like there's, we can go through this one fairly quickly because you've been so expressive with all your answers.
Yeah.
Let's see, Matt, I think you're up.
Yeah, I'd just say you're going to hear probably the same, so we probably can go quickly. I think the focus across the board here is employers aren't looking necessarily to, and group brokers and employees to some extent, they want a familiar experience. And so I think we're all really focused on innovating here in a way that makes this feel very similar to what you're doing today, and very similar to what you do when you shop on Amazon or any other place, right? There's choice, there's decision support available to you, there's integrations that make this seamless to ensure people are getting timely and accurate coverage, they know what they're enrolling in, they're able to search and pursue their networks. And then again, once enrolled, you'll find that all of us are providing, customer service focused on ICHRA and products that are evolving towards this market. So I think in general, what I just caveat here is we're continuing to learn. We're still very early within this process. The data helps inform us. Not only that, our relationship with Venteur, our relationship with group brokers and employers and employees in the market help us understand better what everybody's looking for to ensure that there's a win-win-win situation here. Everybody should come out feeling a little bit better about where they are. And that's ultimately what we tend to see early in ICHRA, but we continue to strive to hit that mark as it evolves over time here.
And Andy?
Yeah, echo a lot of that, Matthew. I think, again, we're on the same page with a lot of things here. And I think the sentiment is that we all know, the folks on this call and on this panel, we need everybody bought in to really make this market and make this market successful for you all as well as your clients, right? So, quickly here, I think it kind of goes back to the last question too, because Lisa, you made a point and it made me think, like, I think there's going to be more opportunity as well, not just thinking of the PPO or larger national networks, and more so like, are there abilities to curate networks for those members that are in border state cities that need access within a few different counties in a few different states. I do see that multiple carriers down the line will be able to create more network options that will appease those employees directly, but still not necessarily have to put it into a national PPO network that they're going to be paying for that they don't need, right? So I think that's a quick point I want to make there. But from Oscar, I mean, we're going to continue to evaluate our product offerings, right? I mean, we're talking to Venteur and our broker partners to understand, like, what are gaps that need to be filled? What are the gaps that need to be filled that are worth pursuing and that we think is really going to help make this market? And I think, the big thing from our point of view is we want to make sure this experience for members moving from the group market to the individual market is truly as seamless as possible. And I think, you're going to see more and more carriers getting, integrated with ICHRA administrators to, appease the enrollment and the billing perspective of an employee enrolling in, carriers that, span across 7 different states. And those are the types of things that we need to make sure are buckled up and are continuing to be innovated on to provide the best experience. And again, this isn't necessarily something that's Oscar specific. This needs to be across the industry. So then we're all in a better position. And I think, when it comes to networks and products and plan designs and things like that, like those are going to evolve with, the employer in mind and the employees in mind. But I think from Oscar's perspective, there's things that, what's worth putting into this to make ICHRA just be the group space, or what's makes sense for these employees to get access to things that they want to enjoy themselves within their plans. Do they want to choose a bronze plan and, with someone like Venteur, keep dollars in their health wallet to go make purchases, whether they're qualified medical expenses, they're, different types of wellness programs and things like that. I think again, this gets back to the education, right? When employees get to make the decisions with their dollars and they know, hey, my employer was giving me $10,000 a year towards my healthcare. Well, now I get to choose what to do with those dollars. And arguably it's the most important thing in my life to make decisions on. I'm going to be a little bit smarter, and I'm going to do a little bit more research, and I'm going to listen and talk with my broker to understand what makes the most sense. And we're going to continue to take feedback from you all. And I encourage it, especially early on, to make changes. Are there wellness or incentive programs that, need to be brought into the individual market to strengthen plans, things like that. Feedback is going to be crucial, and the next 18 months is going to be very telling on where this market's going to go and how it continues to innovate. So
exciting times, right? Don?
Yeah, Andy did a great job explaining it. For me, it is the seamlessness. It's the seamlessness of moving from a group plan to an individual plan. That's why having the same network and having the HSA functionality be the same is really important for us at Sentara Health Plans. Another thing is that because we're regional and we're based in Virginia, we live in the communities that we serve. So making the health of the community is very important to us. So having the wellness programs, we do have a wellness program for our individual members where they can get a gift card for doing healthy behaviors. We have a 24/7 nurse line that they can call at no cost to get advice on things. Because when we look at it, it's the members that are making the decision. So they might choose us this year, but every year they can make another decision. They can choose to go somewhere else. So we want to make sure that they enjoy the health plan that they chose and that they stick with us. So having those benefits and having those wellness programs is something that will help them to feel like they're getting their money's worth.
All right. One more question, and then we're going to end on a piece of advice. Are there any policy or regulatory changes on the horizon that you're kind of watching that we may not know about or heard about? And what do you see transpiring over like the next couple years, 3 to 5 years? Andy, we'll start with you.
Cool. So I think, there's a lot of what if here, right? There's a lot of speculation on what's actually going to happen, what can happen, what will happen. So, I'll speak, generically from our side, with the new administration and, potential changes, there are many ways in which this landscape can shift, right? So, but I think most notably what we want to focus on is that there's buy-in from both sides of the aisle here when it comes to ICHRA, right? They see it has its place in the market. it's a foundation Americans want to see, right? You know, this is one of the few Trump era policies that Biden didn't reverse, and you know, with the current administration and their emphasis on protecting businesses and supporting free market competition, I think this is in a position to continue on its growth trajectory. And obviously, you know, things can change at any minute, but I think that's a very important point, is that this has buy-in from both sides, which is great. You know, when it comes to policy, you know, there are some exciting things in the works. Many are probably aware of across multiple states, but you know, there's, you know, for example, there's some bills moving, you know, through state legislatures, you know, notably Georgia, Ohio, Texas, for example, benefiting those that do enroll in an ICHRA, you know, similar to tax credit policies in Indiana. So I think, you know, those types of things show more buy-in even from the state level that ICHRA is something that's favored. But, you know, engagement with the new administration, Congress, you know, others to educate on ICHRA and the value it brings, and just to lay the groundwork for policy improvements is something that, you know, many of us on this panel are working through. I know our team here at OSCR is doing exactly that. So, you know, a lot of it's, you know, to be seen or to be determined, but I think overall things are pointing in the right direction. So.
Yeah, the different state tax incentives, particularly for the small groups, is really interesting. So, you know, keep an eye on that in your states. If Andy didn't mention your state, they tend to watch each other and follow suit. So interesting to see what will come there. Don?
Yeah, Andy, you did a great job again explaining it. Yeah, with Trump coming up with this and passing this on his first term, I don't see any concerns with ICHRA going away. I think that this is here to stay. There's always changes whenever the government gets involved. There's always changes this way or that way, and we just roll with the punches. With Virginia moving to a Virginia insurance marketplace from the FFM, there's a little bit more local change there able to be made in Virginia. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over the next few years. I don't see it as making the ICHRA go away. I see it more as restricting some of the subsidies and things like that, and some of the SEPs and things like that are available. But I don't have any concerns about where ICHRA is going.
And Matthew?
Yep. I know we're limited on time here, so I'll be quick. I echo the sentiments of my peers here, and I would just say, you know, this has spanned both Republican and Democratic presidencies. So yeah, no concerns in terms of where ICHRA is. And I think we're seeing a lot of great opportunity come from competition, choice. All of those things help drive pricing, help drive better optionality for employees, and help bring down prices for employers. And I think that that's a win for almost everybody.
So we're going to end up, thank you, everyone. Just your advice that you have for brokers that most are just kind of starting to pay attention to ICHRA. Maybe they've only written a couple groups. So what is your best advice to the brokers that we have on the panel? And I think, Don, we'll start with you on this one.
All right. So my advice is to work with a good TPA. You know, Venteur is a great one. So working with somebody that can help you to implement these plans, because if you're not talking to your group about ICHRAs, another broker is going to be. So you really need to know about it. And like Matthew talked about earlier, it's just another tool in your tool belt. And it's not right for everybody, but for the ones that it is right for, you need to be ready for it.
Matthew?
Yeah, Don put it pretty succinctly. I would just add, if you haven't sold ICHRA before and there's hesitation, I hope today what you heard from us helps you understand better, one, the individual market, some of the operational things here. My biggest advice would be just don't be afraid. Get to know this and learn. And sometimes the best way to do that is to go out there and implement a group. So you're getting that firsthand experience. It's never as bad as it seems. That's what I hear from group brokers all the time. I get the apprehension at first, but I would just encourage you, be on the adoption trend earlier rather than later, because to Don's point, others are getting advantageous there and getting out there to procure new clients and win new business utilizing ICHRA. So it helps to be early on this, understand it, and get some firsthand experience.
And Andy?
100% agree there. I mean, it's really be the expert, right? I've seen some comments here in the Q&A and whatnot. Will, for example, being a broker who uses it often, it looks like, uses it as a lead gen play. I have a broker friend of mine who I tried to talk to about ICHRA multiple times, couldn't get anywhere. Called me a couple weeks back, and he was like, "All right, you need to tell me about this. Another broker brought it to my client, so I need to know what it's all about." And it sounds like, Will, you're doing similar things. But that's exactly it. Like, be an expert in what this is. It's another solution to a problem that within the employee benefit space that some of your groups within your book of business may be experiencing. So at the end of the day, being able to show it and have the know-how to implement the strategy for your groups if needed, and not just if needed, but upfront, is something that's going to be, very crucial. I definitely expect this to be more commonplace in the next 2 to 3 years. Is like, these are going to be one of the 3 options that you're offering to your group clients. But it has its place like any other product, right? Not always the right fit, but certainly an alternative solution for many groups that are looking for something else. So I think the other point I would say here in the final point is that you all need to stay involved with the ICHRA education and the implementation, and talking to the members about the carriers and the plans and the networks that they have within. Of course, Venteur can do a great job with their teams to help talk to these employees and show things the right way. But that's what you all are here for, is to be a steward with your clients and make sure they're making the right decisions. And I think year one, it's a large learning curve. But if you started off on the right foot, it's a product that folks truly like. And I think making sure they understand, hey, you don't just have the options that you've always been used to. You have 100, which choice overload is a real thing. But let's get it down to what makes sense for you and your actual conditions you're dealing with in your healthcare journey. And you can be the expert to help them make the right decision. So you'll look like a saint. I'm confident in that.
Well, this has been fantastic. I mean, the information that you have shared, I'm sure has enlightened many. I've learned some things as well. So really, really appreciate you sharing your time, and appreciate everybody taking the time out of your busy schedule. We did run out of time to answer the questions. So what we will do is we will compile the questions, get back to you, make sure that they get answered. So thanks again, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.